Some shadows aren't just tricks of the night. Some shadows follow you home, and some don't leave, no matter how hard you try to run. Tonight, you'll hear two terrifying stories of darkness that doesn't just hide in the corners, but waits, watches, and knows you. From streets haunted by a shadow that mimics your every move, to the chilling presence that lingers inside your own room, these tales will grip your mind and make you question what's really behind the darkness. Dare to watch. If you think you can survive the shadows that follow. Story 1. The first thing you notice isn't the fear. It's the feeling of being watched. That invisible pressure, like eyes drilling through your back, following your every step. I first felt it on an ordinary Thursday evening. I had just finished late at work and was walking to my apartment, my bag slung over my shoulder, earbuds playing some music I barely heard. The street was quiet, empty, too quiet. And then, just for a second, I felt it. Something darker than the night itself, a presence that mirrored my pace. I turned sharply, expecting to see a stranger, a homeless man, someone lurking in the shadows. Nothing, just the streetlights flickering and the echo of my own footsteps. I laughed it off. Everyone feels paranoid when walking alone at night, right? But the feeling didn't leave. Each time I turned a corner, I imagined a figure just out of sight, slipping behind a tree or a parked car. The next night, I noticed something more specific. Every time I looked over my shoulder, there was a shadow that didn't belong to anything I could see. It didn't have a shape, like a person. More like an elongated stain of darkness that crept along the ground behind me, perfectly timed with my movements. It moved when I moved, stopped when I stopped, but always stayed just far enough to keep me from catching it directly. I started taking different routes home, walking faster, sometimes even doubling back to see if it followed. And it did, always. It didn't matter which street I took, which shortcut I tried, it was there, an almost imperceptible smear of blackness that seemed to breathe. I stopped telling friends. I stopped answering calls when I got home. I didn't want anyone to know. I thought maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was exhaustion. But deep down, I knew what I saw was real. Then came the night I tried to confront it. I waited in my apartment, watching through the blinds as the street emptied. When I saw it coming, sliding along the pavement like liquid darkness, I stepped outside. My hand shook, but I shouted, "What are you? Why are you following me?" The air seemed to thicken. The shadow stopped. And then it did something I'll never forget. It bent toward me, not like a person leaning, more like the darkness itself, warping, stretching toward my chest. My heart leapt into my throat, and I stumbled backward, tripping over the curb, and the shadow froze at the edge of the sidewalk. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it recoiled, melting into the alleyway behind the building across the street. Sleep became impossible. Every night, I would lie awake and hear the faintest whisper of movement outside my window, the brush of something against the bricks, a reminder that it was still there. I tried everything: salt, lights, calling the police, changing my route, moving my furniture. But nothing stopped it. It learned, it adapted, it waited. One evening, a week after the confrontation, I was walking home when I noticed something different. The shadow wasn't following me from behind anymore. It was ahead, not in the distance, but just a few steps in front of me. I froze. It mimicked my silhouette perfectly, but distorted. Its arms stretched too long, its head tilted at impossible angles. It looked like me, but not me. It's hard to explain, but it had that unmistakable sense of knowing me, knowing my movements, my fears, the rhythm of my walk. And then it spoke. Not in words, not out loud, but in a thought that wasn't my own. "You can't hide." I ran. I don't remember the streets I passed, the alleys I darted through. All I remember was the suffocating feeling of something closing in, even though I couldn't see it in the darkness. When I finally reached my apartment, I slammed the door shut, bolted it, turned on every light, and swore I would never step outside again. That night, as I lay on my couch, shaking under the blankets, I heard it. The whisper again, soft and almost intimate. "You should come out." I ignored it, telling myself it was in my head. But then the lights flickered. Not just the bulbs. The very air seemed to dim, as if the shadow was pressing against reality itself. And then I saw it. Not outside the window, not at the door, but in the reflection of my TV screen. A figure, my figure, standing behind me, perfectly still. its head tilted the same impossible way, arms hanging like dripping ink. I screamed and spun around. Nothing, but the reflection remained. I tried to turn off the TV. The shadow didn't move. It smiled, or at least the closest thing to a smile a shadow can make, and whispered again, "We're already home." It wasn't following me anymore. It had always been inside. It had been waiting for me, shaping itself around me, becoming me. And the worst part? Every night I catch glimpses of myself moving when I'm not moving, shadows flickering where they shouldn't. And sometimes I wake up on the floor, the room cold, the blankets torn, and a thought in my head that isn't mine. Now, you follow me. Because I realize something terrifying. It doesn't just follow. Once it chooses you, you become part of it. The shadow that followed me home is still here. And now I follow it too. Story 2. The first thing you notice when something is truly wrong isn't fear. It's the subtle, unsettling feeling that you're not alone. I first felt it on a quiet Thursday night, walking home from college. The streets were empty, the lampposts flickering as though struggling to stay awake, and the wind whispered like it knew something I didn't. I had my backpack slung over my shoulder, headphones in, pretending that music could drown out the world. But it didn't. I first noticed it as a shadow, far down the street. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick of the streetlights, a passing car's reflection. But then it moved, and it moved like me. It mimicked my steps. I stopped, and it stopped. I ran, and it ran. And every time I dared to look back, the same dark, fluid shape lingered at a distance, always following, never close enough to see clearly, but close enough to make my skin crawl. The nights after that were worse. I tried to convince myself it was my mind playing tricks. Stress, exhaustion, paranoia, anything to explain it away. But the shadow didn't care about excuses. It didn't disappear, and it didn't blink. I began to notice it at odd times long before dark when I wasn't paying attention. It would be in the corner of my vision, stretching along walls, slipping behind fences, melting across the pavement. Every route I took home, every alley or shortcut, it was there, always there. One night, desperate and terrified, I tried to confront it. I stopped in the middle of the street, heart hammering, and shouted, "What do you want? Why are you following me?" Nothing happened, just the eerie silence of the night, as if the city itself held its breath. Then, it moved differently, slowly, toward me, not walking, not running, but flowing, bending around corners like liquid darkness, stretching impossibly, reaching for me. I ran. My feet pounded the pavement, but it kept pace. And then it vanished, just melted into the night as I reached the safety of my apartment building. Sleep became a stranger. Every night I would lie awake, feeling it somewhere in the room, not visible, not tangible, but there, a presence, waiting. I tried everything, lights, salt, speaking aloud, moving furniture, calling friends or police. Nothing worked. It was patient, cunning, always adapting. And then it changed. One night, it was no longer behind me. It was in front, a few steps ahead. I froze. It was my shape, my exact silhouette, but wrong. Its arms stretched too long, its head tilted unnaturally. It moved like me, breathed like me, knew me. And then it communicated not with words, but with thought. "Come out." I ran. I don't know the streets I passed. I only remember the sensation of being hunted by my own shadow. When I finally reached home, I bolted the door, turned on every light, and tried to convince myself it was over. But it wasn't. That night, as I lay trembling under my blanket, I heard it whisper again. "You can't hide." My lights flickered. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if it pressed against reality itself. And then I saw it. Not in the room, not through the window, but in the reflection of my TV screen. A figure, my figure, standing behind me, perfectly still. Its head tilted impossibly, arms hanging like dripping ink. I screamed. I spun around. Nothing. But the reflection remained. It smiled, or something close to a smile, and whispered in my mind, "We're already home." It wasn't following me anymore. It had always been inside, waiting, shaping itself around me, becoming me. And the worst part? Every night I catch glimpses of myself moving when I'm not moving, shadows flickering where they shouldn't, and sometimes I wake up on the floor, the room icy cold, the blanket ripped, and a thought in my head that isn't mine. Now, you follow me. Because I realized the horrifying truth. It doesn't just follow. Once it chooses you, you become part of it. The shadow that followed me home is still here, and now I follow it too. The end.